Dear students, welcome to our series on how to solve the ethical case studies. In the last lecture, we have tried to understand as to what is a case study and how to solve a case study. But in this lecture, we'll just take up a case study which has been asked in the civil service examination, which was asked in civil services examination 2022. I have just taken up a particular case study. So, we'll deal with our first case study in this particular lecture. So, this case study is related to an organized crime which is happening in the society, a sand mafia that exists in one of the state, and that sand mafia is also in nexus with the local politicians and the local government officials, and how that has led to the loss of life of a sincere and honest police officer, and then subsequently been investigated by an investigative journalist. So, we will try to understand as to what are the various stakeholders, who are the various stakeholders, and what are the ethical dilemmas and issues and options that is available, and how to approach in general such case studies. So, this would be our case study number 1 in the series of case studies that you are going to discuss in this particular lecture. So, this is Babu Gunashekaran, and I have secured all India rank 337 in civil service examination 2016. And I was supposed to join Indian Administrative Service, but for some reason it could not happen, and hence I started teaching subsequently after that. Alright, now let us just get into this particular case study. I will just present the case study, then we will move forward and try to understand as to what are the various questions that is being asked. And if you want, you can just go and briefly look into my previous lectures as to how to approach a case studies. That will also help you, but otherwise also I will explain all the things once again, and we will try to solve this particular case. Alright, before I move forward, a small announcement from StudyIQ. Now, StudyIQ has launched its prelims to interview batch for the month of August. All the batches will be morning online batches starting from 11th of August in all the 3 languages, that is English, and also in the Hindi language. And students who are interested in joining these courses, they can take their admissions at the earliest. And if you want to get an additional discount on these courses, you can use my code BABULI. Alright, so with that we will just proceed to the case study. So, this is the case study. So, probably the case studies are in 2 slides. So, let me just read the case study, so make you understand. But before I go through the case study, it is very important that you keep in your mind that, as I already said, read, reread, so that you understand the entire case study, you try to comprehend the entire case study. And also make sure that you are not having any preconceived notion, you do not have any prejudgment or preconception about this particular case. Do not try to relate that to whatever you have already seen in the society, no. It has to be strictly based on what is asked in this particular case study. But of course, you can use the general knowledge, that the legal mechanisms or the legal awareness that you have and the constitutional values in answering the question, but do not bring in any new facts which is not presented in the case. Alright, come to the case study. The case study is saying the Supreme Court has banned mining in Aravalli Hills. So, the Supreme Court has already banned the mining in Aravalli Hills to stop the degradation of the forest cover and to maintain ecological balance. That means the Supreme Court has banned it. So, anybody who is doing it is illegal. So, if the mining is still happening, it is illegal or it is against the rule of law in the country, because the Supreme Court has already declared it to be declared that to be banned. However, the stone mining was still prevalent in the border districts of the affected state. So, here they are only saying the border districts of the affected state, they have not mentioned the name of the state. So, do not put some name of the state, do not assume yourself certain information. That means it is still happening where in the border districts of the affected state, with the connivance of certain corrupt forest officials and politicians. Yes. So, there is some nexus between some of the forest officials and the politicians. Young and a dynamic SP who was recently posted in the affected district promised to himself to stop the menace. So, he is a very sincere, honest officer. A new and a young SP is posted, and then he promised to himself that he is going to stop this particular thing. So, that means you can see that he is an officer with high level of integrity and honesty. In one of his surprise checks with his team, so he is not alone, he is with his team, he found a loaded truck with a stone trying to escape the mining area. He tried to stop the truck, but the truck driver overran the police officer, killing him on the spot, and thereafter managed to flee. So, of course, this is a lot of ethical concern is there in this particular line. A police officer losing his life in the line of duty is a serious ethical concern. Okay, so try to understand all those things as you go through it, and manage to flee. That means here you can also understand that there is some element of lack of training or the procedure that the police have followed. Probably they have not followed their standard operating procedures or something. So some lacuna is also there. So these are all the few information that may be not in the first case study, but as you will go through the case study, you should be able to understand all those things. Managed to flee. The police filed FIR, but no breakthrough was achieved in the case almost for 3 months. That means after 3 months also there is no breakthrough in this particular case, despite the fact that a police officer at the rank of SP has been killed in this particular case. Ashok, who was an investigative journalist. So Ashok is a person who is an investigative journalist working for a leading TV channel, Suomoto, on his own. Suomoto means on his own. Started investigating the case. Within 1 month, Ashok got the breakthrough. So here you can have some kind of understanding that police was not able to do it for 3 months, but Ashok himself, without any support, without any institutional support, he has found something. So that means something fishy with the police department as well. So started investigating the case. Within 1 month, Ashok got breakthrough by interacting with the local people, the stone mining mafia and the government officials. He prepared his investigative story and presented to the CMD, the Chief Managing Director of the TV channel. He exposed in his investigative report the complete nexus of the stone mafia working with the blessings of the corrupt police and the civil officials and politicians. So that means in his report it is very clear. Now why this is very successfully running? Because there is a nexus between the politician and then the nexus between the mafia and also nexus between the government officials along with the police. That is the biggest issue. So this is a major ethical concern that we will have to subsequently deal with. The politician who was involved, in fact Ashok also found that the politician who was involved in the mafia was no one else but the local MLA. So it is aggravating the problem. The local MLA who is elected representative of the people, and he is also considered to be very close to the chief minister. So he is considered to be very close to the chief minister. So these are all the things that you will have to understand. The moment we feel that he is considered to be very close to the chief minister, we understand that the chief minister will help him. So that's a preconception, that's a prejudgment. Do not come to that particular judgment. So that approach should not be followed when you write an answer. He may be close, but maybe the chief minister is a very honest man. So close doesn't mean that the chief minister will not act. And also it is only saying that he is considered to be very close. He may not be even close to the chief minister. Okay, so all these are the prejudgments and the preconception that we have when we solve the case studies, which should not be there in the minds of the students. After going through the investigative report, the CMD advised Ashok to drop the idea of making the story public through electronic media. So the CMD advised Ashok not to do this. He informed that the local MLA was not only the relative. So why the CMD has advised this? He informed to Ashok that the local MLA was not only the relative to the owner of the TV channel, but also had unofficially 20% share in the channel. So here the biggest problem is that the local MLA is relative to the owner of this particular channel, and he is also having unofficially some shares in the company as well. So here also you should not have a prejudgment that even if he is having some shares or for that matter relative, probably the owner might still act. Maybe the owner is a very honest person. We never know because that is not mentioned here in the case. So we should not come to a conclusion. The CMD further informed Ashok that his further promotions and hikes. So at his level, the CMD at his level further informed Ashok that his further promotions and hike in pay will be taken care of, in addition to the soft loan of 10 lakhs which he has taken from the TV channel for his son's chronic disease. That means you can understand that Ashok is not a person who is extremely financially well, and he has some personal problems also, like health issues of his son. So he is in badly need of this particular job as well. So all these things has to be part of your answer when you write the answer to this particular question. So chronic disease will be suitably adjusted if he hands over the investigative report to him. That means that 10 lakh loan may be waived off, and some promotions and some pay hike may also be given to Ashok. So personally he has everything to gain if he is silent on this particular matter. So there is also a conflict of interest between in this case you will understand there is a conflict of interest between his personal gain and the professional responsibility. So all these things has to be dealt with in this particular case. So we will deal with one by one all these things. But before we go to the case study approach, What are the questions that is asked in this particular case? You can understand. What is the first question? It is saying what are the options available with Ashok to cope up with the situation. So that means you will have to identify what are the various possible options. You can give discrete options, no issues. And then critically evaluate or examine each of the options identified by Ashok, which means you should also be in a position to assess the positives and negatives of these options. Not necessarily all the options are right options, but what are the positives of a particular option? You should be in a position to assess them in this particular case. What are the ethical dilemmas being faced by Ashok? Ethical dilemma means Ashok is in a position of an ethical dilemma between right and wrong. He knows that something is right, but there can be a consequence to him. But something is wrong, there can be a positive consequence for him. That is an ethical dilemma. So, what kind of ethical dilemma probably Ashok faces in this particular case? Which of the options do you think would be the most appropriate Ashok adopt and why? So, here they are not asking which of the option, it is which of the options. That means probably you can give a course of action. It's also there is no need that you'll have to write a specific option that you have chosen. You can give a course of action. So, what is course of action? I have already told in the course of action that you can combine one or two options as well, and then you can give a logical sequence of events. What Ashok has to do, or which would be the best appropriate course of actions, or if you combine the different options, what could be the best course of action to deal with this particular issue. So, that also you can write it here, and why is something that you can answer. And in the event of the above scenario, what type of training would you suggest? Because a sincere and a honest police officer losing his life in the line of duty is a very serious concern, and hence we will have to protect all such officers. So, that means there could be possibly better approach that is followed, or a better training that could have saved the life of the officer. So, what kind of training do you suggest to the police officer posted in such districts where the stone mining or illegal activities are rampant? So, it is a clear cut question which involves few subject matters, it involves a certain stakeholders, it involves certain ethical issues and dilemmas, and then there are certain directives that is given in the question. So, these are the directives. So, in the last lecture I was talking about the directives, these are nothing but the directives. But before we go to the directives, it is very important that we identify certain things, and once you identify certain things, whether it is explicitly asked in the question or not asked in the question, you will have to identify those things. Now, once you identify, you can also write it in your answer also, but not necessarily in each and every question you have to write it. What is very relevant is you will have to answer to these things. But in order to answer these things effectively, you will have to identify certain things that makes your case study approach far better. All right. So, what is the approach that I would suggest? That before you enter into this, first you try to identify the stakeholders in this particular case, and then also what are the various subject matter that this particular case is related to. So, if not everything, because I understand that there is a time constraint when you solve this particular question in the examination, but try to identify the major subject matters around which this particular case is resolving or revolving around. And then you identify the ethical issues, what are the things that you feel morally wrong that is happening in this particular case. And then if you find any ethical dilemma between right and wrong, so you can also identify those ethical dilemmas, and then pay attention to the directives that is given in the questions. So, what are the instructions that is given in the questions? So, these are the attention, these are the areas where you will have to focus your attention to solve this particular question. All right, so let me just quickly run through the stakeholders. So, as far as we have gone through, you can understand these are the various stakeholders I can identify in this particular case. So, Ashok and his family members, definitely yes, Ashok, who is performing investigative journalism. The report is against the nexus between a politician and the top government officials, or at least some of the government officials. So, that means that if he makes it public, there can be few repercussions, and you can also see that there is a close connection between MLA and the company as well. So, there can be repercussions to Ashok, definitely. So, Ashok and his family members, his son is going through a treatment. If Ashok loses the job, he may also get affected. So, definitely he is a stakeholder. Public at large, the money of the public is being looted. Illegal mafia is taking away the public resource. So, the public at large is affected. It is a societal menace. It is a societal issue. So, definitely the public at large is getting affected. The government officials, and with the help of them this is happening, so that is very unfortunate. So, the government officials are also stakeholders in this. The government officials are supposed to ensure their duty with probity. That means they have to set high moral standards in performing the public duty, but instead of setting high moral standards, there are few officials who are corrupt as well. So it involves the question of the probity in public life. So the government officials are also involved. There is a sincere and a honest police officer. On the one hand, you can see police officials who are not sincere and other government officials. On the other hand, you can see a young, dynamic, sincere, honest police officer has lost his life in the line of duty. So he is also, and his family members, probably they are all stakeholders. Sand mafia, which is creating this entire issue. So they have something to gain out of this particular issue. So they will try to resist whatever is done by the other people. So sand mafia, the corrupt politician is a stakeholder. The government is the one who has to take care of all those things. The government is the one who has to ensure the rule of law. And the Supreme Court has already passed a judgment to ban the sand mafia. So there is a clear and blatant violation of the Supreme Court ruling. So all these things you can see that the various stakeholders in this particular case study. So try to have a broader dimensions of the case study. So the moment you identify the broader dimensions of case study, so why it is very important, then your answer writing, sometimes students does not get much points to write because they do not identify the stakeholders in the first place. So the moment you are going to identify the stakeholders, then it becomes easier. Alright, now come to the next thing that you have to identify is what is the subject matter on which this particular question is asked. So I could see that it is not purely on a particular subject matter, but we could understand that 2-3 subject matters are involved in this particular case study. One, you could see that there is a societal issue, illegal mining that affects the society at large. So definitely it is a societal issue, it's a corrupt activity and the public property is being looted, the public money is being looted, the public resources being looted for few individuals for their own benefit. So there is a societal issue of illegal mining, and then it also leads to environmental degradation. The ecosystem will get affected because of this particular thing. So there is definitely an environmental issue, and then this issue is also related to what is called as the probity in governance, because it is the responsibility of the government officials to exhibit high moral standards and behaviors when they are appointed to certain public office or when they are elected to public office. But here we could see, on the one hand, a sincere officer is losing his life, but on the other hand, there are few corrupt officials still involved in corruption and helping this particular sand mafia, having nexus with them. So the issue of probity in governance is also the subject matter. So these are all the subject matter that I could understand. Although these things are not directly relevant to be written in the answers, but trying to understand these issues from these dimensions will help you to write a better answer. All right. Now come to the ethical issues that I have identified in this particular case. So to me, what are the various ethical issues? So there's a blatant violation of the Supreme Court guideline. The Supreme Court has already given whatever is said by the Supreme Court becomes the law of the land. You are giving there's a blatant violation to the Supreme Court judgment. That means there is blatant violation of rule of law. That means the law is saying something, but arbitrarily something is happening. There is an arbitrary exercise of power here. So that is an ethical issue. Second is there is an organized crime, a nexus between mafia and the politicians and the other government officials is a serious concern for the society. It's the next biggest issue in this particular matter. Wastage of public money and the national resources for the benefit of few individuals. And whatever is happening is something which is unsustainable, which could affect the future generations to come. So that is again a big, this ecological degradation is again a big ethical concern. And then death of a honest police officer in the line of duty. We cannot afford to do that. So we need sincere and honest officers who care for the society, and here you could see one such officer has lost his life. That's a very serious concern in this particular case. And then coming to professional ethics of the journalist. So in this case, if you take personally Ashok, so Ashok, by investigating all those things, as a part of his profession, there is something which is called as professional ethics. So professionally, he is supposed to expose all those things, but he has everything to lose if he is exposing all those things. So whether to do or not to do, so that is again a big ethical issue in this particular case. So these are the various ethical issues that I could identify. So now once you identify the stakeholders, once you identify the various subject matters, once you identify the ethical issues and dilemmas, then your answer writing becomes far more easier. So once you do this exercise, so what you'll have to do whenever you go through a case study, read, reread, try to understand all those things. Once you understand, then the answer writing becomes much easier. Now come to the directives that is given in the question. So what are the various possible options available with Ashok to cope up with the situation? So whenever they ask you the questions, so these can be discrete options. There is no need that one option should be in continuity with another options. That means what are the various possible options? What are the various possible options? So you could have done option number 1, 2, 3 and 4. They are not even asking that which is the most appropriate option or what is the right option. So it is just the option. So just think of options, but it should be sensible options. Whether be it right or be it wrong, it should be sensible options. That is what will help you to get the better mark. So here I have identified 4 options. So not necessarily you will have to go with the same options. You can try your own options also. So whatever that comes to my mind is that accept the offer which is given by the chief managing director. So it's a very simple option. But we'll analyze this as to what is, but here there is no need to analyze all those things. Here just write the options, because the question is asking what? What are the options available to Ashok to cope up with the situation? Accept the offer given by the CMD, matter is solved. Convince the CMD to set up a meeting with the owner and brief him the situation. So here why Ashok is trying this? Because Ashok is not having any prejudgment that the owner may not help. But his CMD on his own is saying that the owner may not help, it may turn against you, but probably Ashok wanted to try it the last level within the organization. So you can try that also. So convince CMD to set up a meeting with the owner and brief him of the situation. So this is the second option that you can write probably. Or if these two things, if Ashok feels that it will not work out, he can directly go to the police, file an FIR and submit the evidence that he has got. And then the last thing, if he also feels that this may also not work, because already Ashok knew that already there is a police FIR that is filed, but in the last 3 months nothing has happened. So probably he is not believing in the local police. So what he is doing is he is also aware of some of the legal mechanisms. So he is directly presenting all the evidences and he is directly complaining to the CM cell. So he is directly doing to the CM's vigilance cell and forward a copy of all the reports to a leading news media also. Not his own company, probably some other leading news media. So this is another option that he can probably do. So where he is going beyond the legal mechanisms outside his own organization to seek the help. So probably whenever they ask you such questions, try to identify 3-4 sensible options, because they are not asking the number of options, but an optimum thing would be 3 to 4 sensible options. Do not go beyond that also. You will be running out of options. So these could be some of the options that you can write. But come to the second question. So this is very important. So whenever you select the options, it is also very important that you select the options which helps you to make a critical analysis, and that critical analysis and assessment can be made only if you have identified the various ethical issues and the stakeholders and the ethical dilemmas in this particular case. That's why I said that we'll have to do that particular exercise. All right. So critically evaluate and examine each of the options identified, Ashok. So that means the second directive in the question is that, okay, you have these options. So how would you analyze these options? That means you will have to investigate and come out with a fair assessment of your options, the positives and negatives of your options, different options. All right. So I'll do it from here itself as to what are the fair assessment. We'll try to make an assessment of the various options. So come to the first option, accept the offer given by the CMD. If he is accepting the offer given by the CMD, please understand, if Ashok is accepting the offer given by the CMD, then yes, everything is personally good. So his family will be safe, his loan is waived off, probably he may get a promotion, and then he may be in the good books of his office. But at the same time, what is the basic problem? He is failing out on what? He is failing out on performing his professional responsibility. He is not performing his the responsibility as a investigative journalist. And also he is not ensuring justice to whom? He is not ensuring justice to the deceased police officer, and also he is not taking care of the societal interest. So somewhere he is failing on his professional responsibility. So that is the analysis that you can make of the first option. So the first option anyways may not be the appropriate option, but you don't have to write it. You don't have to write it, but yes, that is the assessment of the first option. Come to the second option, convince the chief managing director to set up a meeting with the owner and brief him of the situation. Now here the CMD is saying that the local politician is having stake and he is also relative to the owner. But Ashok is not having any prejudgment that he may not help. He wanted to try within the organization before moving out. That means he is following the right path. The right path is also, which is part of the deontological ethics, that you will have to follow the right means when you do certain things. So here he is trying to follow the right path. So that means he is first trying to reach out the higher management, the last resort within the organization. So he is trying to convince the CMD And then if the CMD is convinced and if he is taking it to the owner, probably if the owner is the right person, then that is a good thing that can happen, because his job will not be at risk. So he may get a promotion also. And at the same time, what if he can convince the owner of the organization, at the same time he can ensure justice to the deceased officer, and he can also try to address the societal issues by giving publicity to this particular thing. So that is again a good option, but the risk of this particular thing is that if the owner is 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 also having a good relation with, let us assume, the local politician, and if the owner is also part of it because he is also investing in this particular thing, then probably the job of Ashok is at risk and he has everything to lose, and there is a risk in this particular option as well. Now the third thing is file an FIR ignoring the advice given by the CMD. So if you file an FIR ignoring the advice given by the CMD, yes, that he is doing the right thing. He is going to the police and exposing the nexus, and he is having all the proof to prove it in a court of law. He has all the reports to prove that what is the nexus and who is doing all these crimes, and he can also ensure probably the justice to the deceased police officer. But then the biggest problem here is, so how far he can trust the police, because already that there is lot of 3 months that nothing has happened in the investigation. So that is can be one of the problem. And then personally here you can see that he is directly ignoring the internal mechanisms within the organization, and he is directly going out of the organization. That means there can be some kind of actions which can be taken by the organization. Maybe probably he is violating the code of conduct of the organization. So personally he may lose something, his job or some of the other things. So that's the drawback of this particular scenario. And come to the last thing, submit the report to the CM cell and forward a copy of the report to a leading news media. So this is again, you see that in this particular case, he is making sure that it is getting the highest attention. This particular crime is getting the highest attention, and also at the same time he is also making sure that he is giving the report to a leading news media, so that it is also there in the media, so there will be pressure upon the government. And at the same time, probably because of all these things, he may get a job opportunities elsewhere, because he may get few popularity also. But at the same time, he is at the risk of losing his previous job. If he is getting job elsewhere, that is fine. And the advantage of this particular thing is that because it is given to the CM cell and because it is given to the media, he may have some protection, because everybody is watching him right now. So that is one advantage, but there is no surety again. The problem in this particular case is there is no surety again how the CM cell is going to act, because it is already said that the local politician MLA is seem to be close to the CM. So it depends upon the integrity and the honesty of CM and the media, the leading news media to which he has submitted it. Okay. So again, these issues there. So this is the assessment of the various options that Ashok can probably take in this particular case. So now come to the third question: what are the ethical dilemmas being faced by Ashok? So in the process, whatever the options that he take, in the process, what are the various ethical dilemmas that various ethical dilemmas that may be faced by Ashok? So first thing is the conflict of interest. One is that if Ashok hands over this particular report, he has everything to gain personally, but professionally he has to perform certain duty. So the biggest conflict for him is that personal interest versus professional responsibility. That is his professional ethics. So if I do this, I'll personally gain, but I'll fail on this. If I do this, I may personally lose. So this is the biggest ethical dilemma. So he has to come out of this and he has to decide as to what he has to do. Second thing is public interest versus personal safety and risk. Now please understand, if he is performing his professional responsibility and he can take care of the public interest. So probably if he is giving this report, or probably he is publishing this electronic report, or probably he is placing it in front of CM cell or an FIR, so it becomes public and he is doing his duty also, but he has a lot of things at risk. His son is undergoing a treatment, his job is at stake, his son is not well, he has taken a loan, so financially he is not well. So there is a lot of personal risk. He may be also at risk because of the nexus. The mafia can even kill him or any of his family members. So there is a lot of personal safety and other risk that he has to go through. That is the next problem. And then the next ethical dilemma, that is justice to the deceased police officer versus injustice to self and his family. Okay, he may take very seriously that he wanted to ensure justice to the police officer who has lost his life in the line of duty. But if he is trying to ensure justice to him and to his family members, there may be injustice that may be caused to him. There can be certain personal loss as well. That is again a major concern. So, whether I will act on my own personal interest or for the interest of the others. So, that is the next major concern. And then here he understands that there is a blatant violation of rule of law. And as an investigative journalist, it is his responsibility also to expose any blatant violation of rule of law. And because the Supreme Court has already said that the mining has to be banned, but still it is happening. And hence, he has to ensure that the rule of law prevails, whatever is within his capacity, but that can cost him personally also. That there may be a heavy cost he has to pay for the professional duty that he is performing. So, these are all the dilemmas that may be running in the mind of Ashok before he takes any of the options. All right. Now, come to the next question. So, which of the following options do you think would be the most appropriate for Ashok to adopt and why? Which of the following options do you think would be the most appropriate for Ashok to adopt and why? So, here they are asking which of the following options. So, that means not necessarily you have to choose any of the options because you have been given a different options. But here you can slightly modify it and you can also write the best course of action. You can combine one or two options also if you want. A logical sequence of events that how you would proceed in this particular case, and then why you will have to say, you will have to justify as to why you will follow this logical course of action. So, probably if I am in the position of the students, I would say my logical course of action is that first Ashok has to try to meet his owner. So, he has to convince his CMD. So, convince the CMD and to set up a meeting with owner, to set up meeting with owner. All right. So, that means he is trying everything internally. So, he tries to understand as to what happens here. So, once he tries to understand everything, so then if this is not happening, then he goes to police and files an FIR. But the FIR has already been filed, nothing has happened. So, he has to be little suspicious about this also. So, probably on top of that what he can do, so he can also forward the report to CM cell and to a local media. So, in this way you can see that logically if you will see, so first he is trying to do everything within the organization, but he understands that within the organization nothing is happening. So, then what he tries to do is that he files to legally file an FIR, and then because he is suspicious of the FIR and because he is also personally maybe a victim of all those things, so he also needs some protection. So, he is also taking the matter to the highest level, to the CM cell and also to some local media. But however, all these things may be the best option if you can follow these things. So, that can be the best option. So, trying out and then simultaneously, first trying out and then simultaneously doing these two things. But however, all these things may have a heavy personal price and personal cost for Ashok, there is no doubt in that, but he has to do that if he has to uphold his uphold his professional ethics or his professional responsibility. Okay, so this could be the best option in my opinion which he could do, although it may lead to a personal cost for him. All right. So, now come to the last part of the answer. In the above scenario, what type of training would you suggest for police officers posted in such districts where stone mining illegal activities are rampant? So, here you can see one of the officer, a very young officer, lost his life, probably because of the fact that although he is very he is trying to ensure the honesty and integrity, but there are certain lapses probably in the standard operating procedure. There were certain lapses in the knowledge, there were certain lapses in the training. So, it is very important that these things has to be taken care of because we cannot afford to lose a lot of sincere and honest officers. So, what are the things that you can suggest here is, first of all, I would say that the police officers who are posted here, they should be aware of the local terrain and geography. So, probably here the police officer, the SP was trying to stop the vehicle. Probably he was trying to stop the vehicle because he thinks that probably after this, the vehicle cannot be stopped. So, but if they have the proper knowledge of the terrain and the geography, so there can be a place where they can again catch this particular vehicle. And in addition to that, it is not that you cannot go and stop these vehicles. There has to be appropriate barricading technologies. So, I think they have to be given training with regard to the various barricading technologies that can be followed, so that can stop a heavy vehicle. So, you cannot personally go and stop a heavy vehicle if they are not following the rules, and especially the mafia, they do not care for these things. So, I think one of the area where the training can be given as students have to think is how to give training with regard to various barricading technologies to the police officers, and also the local terrain and the geography. They should be completely aware of the local terrain and geography, so that even if that they miss out on a vehicle, an illegal vehicle at a particular place, so they should know where they can again catch this particular vehicle. And then danger sensitization. Sometimes the officers are not aware of the danger sensitization. Sometimes they feel that everybody is like a local people, but the mafias may go to any extent. So, they should be aware of what could be the possible consequences for their actions. So, accordingly, a standard operating procedures has to be developed in such areas. And then officers should also be trained in close combat and the arms training, which I think anyways the police personnel they go through. But whenever specially they are to be posted to such areas, you can recommend that they should be given a short refresher training, because whatever training that they had is only during the training time when they were initially recruited, but you will have to be repeatedly trained so that you become more efficient. So, whenever they are about to be posted to such areas, a short refresher training for a couple of weeks may be provided to them, so that they are well equipped with the using of arms and other close combat things. And then the next important thing is about the intelligence collection, because intelligence collection is very, very important in dealing with all those things. So, you should have the right intelligence, and accordingly you can go and rightly catch them with proper barricading technologies and proper standard operating procedures. So, intelligence collection not only from the police, but also from the local people. So, how to collect the intelligence from the local people. So, such type of training may also be given. In addition to that, any officers who are posted in that particular area, they should be able to liaison effectively with the other departments, be it the other civil departments or the forest departments in this particular place. So, liaisoning is so that you can get the information and you can effectively coordinate. So, with all these type of training, I think it would be effective for the police officer posted in such areas, especially where there is mafia, to deal with these particular things. Alright. So, this is the way that we will deal with the other case studies as well. As we will move forward, what we will do is, so every week we will try to take up at least 2 case studies, and we will try to elaborately discuss as to how would you approach these case studies. So, how you effectively deal with a case study depends upon how you are able to understand the various ethical issues in that particular case study, identify various stakeholders in that particular case study, how well you are able to logically organize your thoughts when you present that in the examination. So, once you start doing this, so probably we will try to do it for the last 5 years of UPSC questions, and also if possible we will take up some of the important issues from the current affairs as well, and then we will try to solve these things one by one, and it will be extremely useful to the students who are preparing for the civil service examination, and also the students who are writing for the mains examination this year. So, keep watching this particular series. So, we will come out with the next case study very shortly. Thank you very much for watching this particular video. If you like this particular video, if you sincerely like and if you feel that it would help the other students, you can forward that to the other aspirants also and suggest that to your friends as well. Thank you very much. All the very best. God bless.